This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight now, we bring you a discussion on significance of Prime Minister's visit to European nations and Nordic Summit. The participants are Anil Wadhwa, former diplomat, and Manish Anand, journalist.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 3 European nation tour. Just a while back, he concluded the second Nordic summit with Norway, Iceland, Finland, Denmark and Sweden. We know that the first Nordic summit was held in Stockholm in 2018, and the Nordic countries are well known across the world to be the powerhouse of clean technology and also known for innovations. Ambassador Wadhwa, how do you see the second Nordic summit and its significance given that the global challenges are only compounding day after day?
The first Nordic summit, as you rightly mentioned, was held in 2018. Many years have passed since that event, and the world has moved on since then. India has brought in a lot of reforms within its economy to cope with the issues of climate change and cutting-edge technologies which are fast catching up. These relate to the innovation side of technology, and renewable energy has made a lot of progress, for example, in India. There is also growing awareness in India of being prepared for combating climate change, and the promises that India has made at the COP meeting, Glasgow, have to be fulfilled in time. India is well on its way to do that, but in order to do so, it requires technologies which are very important as far as the Nordic countries are concerned, because they have achieved a lot in innovation in clean energy, green technologies and education. And therefore, this green energy partnership that has been forged with Nordic countries will go a long way in mitigating the effects of climate change in India and also prepare India well for the future. That is why this second summit, which was held today, we have seen that there's been an emphasis on climate change and innovative technologies and as well as renewable energy in a major way. Almost every bilateral that Prime Minister Modi has held with the Nordic countries has also stressed the fact that we need to do much more in this field with each other. And I see this as very significant going forward because the companies who have accompanied the Prime Minister in this particular meeting are all well chosen, well represented. And the 450-odd countries from the Nordic states who work in India today and 70-odd premier companies who work in the Nordic countries from India are all gearing up to see how they can take advantage of the 4 main focus areas: green technology, innovation and digitization, energy independence and renewable energy, water, environment and agriculture, and infrastructure, transport and services.
Ambassador Wadhwa, Prime Minister Modi had made a significant remark before the Nordic Summit when he said that Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is not about just increasing trade only, but it is far more comprehensive. With this, India is approaching the changing world order. Do you think that this intense bilateral and multilateral talks that Prime Minister Modi held in the last 3 days is part of India positioning to the changing world order post-COVID-19 pandemic and also in the times of Russian and Ukrainian war?
Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is essentially a very symbolic phrase that the Prime Minister has used because he knows that the world is one, and unless there is cooperation in this world, especially in terms of climate change, that there could be disaster for countries around the world, especially countries like India, which have a large population and heavy demand of urbanization, which brings in the severe effects of climate change. And in order to combat that, it is necessary that there is cooperation which is forged with countries around the world. Just walking it alone or trying to do things yourself does not work. Similarly, India has a lot to contribute also to the world, and Prime Minister Modi has made it clear that India wants to work with other countries in this journey as it moves forward and wants to take others also along with this journey of prosperity. You are right about pointing out about what is happening post-COVID and what's happened in terms of the situation in Ukraine today. We don't know how long the situation in Ukraine is going to continue, but as long as it continues, the world is getting devastated and resources are being depleted. These are much needed resources which could be deployed for better causes like climate change.
Ambassador Wadhwa, Prime Minister's another remark is significant when he said that India has a scale and speed to come up with the world's expectations. If we look that in the context of the disruptions in the global supply chain, because half of the China right now is in lockdown because of the outbreak of COVID-19 there. And the world definitely would be looking for an alternative because of the over-dependence on Chinese has definitely disrupted the supply of critical resources. In that context, Prime Minister Modi's visit to these three nations was definitely heavy with economic agenda. Do you think India has positioned rightly to attract the critical investments in the new technology?
Yes, I think that has been the endeavor of the Prime Minister during this visit to project India as a place for investment. He also referred to the fact that nobody should be left out of this market because it's a rapidly growing market which has all the resources for scaling up technologies. You also rightly pointed out that there has been supply chain disruptions which have been caused due to the situation of COVID. For example, in countries like China, India is an alternative, but to reach the scale of China and to match China, India will have to work hard and do more in terms of the reform process within the country, which it is trying to do. And this is what the Prime Minister was trying to project, that India has the manpower, India has the demographic dividend, and it has the technologies which can be scaled up with the help of Nordic countries. Therefore, he made a pitch for the induction of these technologies into the Indian market, where the Nordic countries could also benefit and their businesses could also benefit.
Ambassador Wadhwa, if we move a little backward, because in the first 2 days, Prime Minister Modi had intense bilateral talks with the German Chancellor. That was the first after his election. That was also heavy with the economic agenda. But we see that the Ukrainian war did cast its shadow, and the European countries appear to be expecting Prime Minister Modi to influence Russia to end this war. But India has consistently reiterated its position that dialogue should be the way out. How do you think that India will meet up with the expectations of the European countries?
As far as influencing Russia is concerned, I think Prime Minister Modi made it very clear that he's spoken on a number of occasions to both sides, Russia as well as Ukraine, because he said that at the end of the war, there are no winners. Everybody is a loser. And that is why the path that India has chosen of diplomacy and negotiations as a way to resolve this conflict and bring an end to the conflict as quickly as possible is the only sane way forward. This is something which was reiterated once again in his interactions with various European leaders. But I think as far as India's stand is concerned, that's been made pretty clear over the last few weeks, starting from the United Nations General Assembly and then in various statements of the spokesperson and our ministers and high dignitaries, that we have a desire to see this conflict stop as soon as possible, and secondly, that the solution will be found only through diplomatic means. And I think the world does understand where India is coming from.
Ambassador Wadhwa, Indo-Pacific also figured in the talks. And in that context, when Prime Minister Modi said that the international order is based on the United Nations Charter, and that is rules-based, respecting the territorial sovereignty. So do you think that the Indian Pacific mention in the European tour is significant because of the developments that we see in the South China Sea and the maritime disruptions we come across?
We know that the established world order is being disturbed through the aggressive actions of China in the South China Sea. Many of these islands have been occupied and populated and armed, and China has actually used grey zone tactics to stop legitimate activities like fishing, etc., of the claimants in these islands. The 9-dash line of China, which was promulgated some years ago, was rejected by the International Court. China has rejected that ruling, and therefore it is clear that it does not want to abide by the principles of the United Nations. In this scenario, it is important that all like-minded countries, especially democracies, come together and they reiterate once again the rule of law and the belief in the UN Charter. And this is why this issue has figured during this trip, because like India, all the European countries believe in the rule of law and the fact that what is happening in South China Sea is blatant aggression.
Ambassador Wadhwa, we have seen that in the recent days, before Prime Minister Narendra Modi embarked on the European tour, that India emphasized and sought to explain to the European and the Western countries about Indian perspective on the world order, because the Western countries are more focused right now on the Ukrainian war, but we want to see in totality that there are more issues in Asia also that also needs the attention of the world. Do you think India is able to bring the attention of the European countries to other issues also which are going on for years and decades?
Yes, there have been incidents on the South China Sea, but besides that, there's also been Chinese aggression on the line of actual control with India. We've seen over the past few years how that aggression has grown and incidents of violation of the border and territorial integrity and sovereignty of India. We've also seen the withdrawal of the United States and Western countries from Afghanistan, which is in our immediate neighborhood, which has actually left countries like India in a lurch because of the massive development program that we had with Afghanistan. And obviously, crises have been brewing with regard to Taiwan, with regard to the Pacific Island states through aggressive Chinese actions. So I think it was important to remind the world that other than Ukraine, there have been other crises which have been going on in Asia, which also need to be kept in mind and are equally important from the perspective of the Asian countries.
Ambassador Wadhwa, PM Modi was very warmly received in Denmark. And Denmark had been partner of India in the White Revolution. And now we are expecting, and rather we are partnering with Denmark in our green future. Hundreds of Danish companies are working in India. Do you think time is ripe for the Danish companies to scale up their investments and partnership with India in more newer technology areas?
Absolutely, because I think Denmark is an ideal partner for India in many important areas. There are actually 11 working groups that have been set up between India and Denmark in cutting-edge technologies and specific fields like digitization, food processing, shipping and ports, renewable energy, animal husbandry, environment, smart cities, health and medicine, etc. And in fact, the total cumulative investments between India and Denmark amount to about $3 billion, of which India has invested a small amount of $450 million. Rest is the Danish investment into India. The trade has grown to $5 billion in 2021 with an additional services trade of $2.3 billion in 2020. So Denmark offers us some important skills and areas of cooperation like climate, like renewable energy, skills development, and of course cooperation in the Arctic. And all these are important fields for India. There are 200 Danish companies in India, as you said, 60 Indian companies working in Denmark. They are all into very important fields. And today, the areas which were recognized with the meeting of the Prime Ministers, for example, cooperation in science and technology and digitization, etc. These are all artificial intelligence, quantum computing, future mobile technologies, clean technologies and smart grids. These are all very important for the development path of India. So I think this relationship needs to be taken forward quickly, and India would definitely gain from this relationship. I would say so would Denmark, because it can scale up its technologies and its companies can do well with the big market that India offers.
Ambassador Wadhwa, in Germany, PM Modi co-chaired the 6th intergovernmental consultations with Germany. And we know that Germany is a technology powerhouse. And besides that, Germany has 2 lakh Indians living there, part of their economy. What is the significance of this intergovernmental consultations and its contributions to India's growth and development?
The greatest importance of the intergovernmental consultations is the fact that it has been agreed now to have a ministerial level which is going to be below the IGC at the summit level. And that would mean that there would be greater follow-up going forward. Secondly, the fact that there have been some very important areas which have been identified, and both countries have actually followed up on those areas, which will lead to a further strengthening of the green strategic partnership between the two countries, will lead to better technologies in the environmental field, which Germany is adept at, will make sure that India and Germany going forward are able to fill the gaps with each other, and they're able to, most importantly, fulfill the commitments that have been made at the Glasgow summit in the environmental field.
Ambassador Wadhwa, you gave your insight. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to a discussion on significance of Prime Minister's visit to European nations and Nordic summit. The participants were Anil Wadhwa, former diplomat, and Manish Anand, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.